I have white rice topped with Parmesan cheese every night for dinner with my family. While this may seem a little strange or rather unorthodox to you, I can assure you it's just one aspect of my life growing up in a blend of cultures. Meet my family. As you might be able to guess, the yellow indicates my mother's Asian ancestry. Sorry, I'm a little cliché. But the pale pink represents my father's European ancestry, and logically, as you can see below, my sisters and I are half Asian and half European. Now, when my mother was a little girl, her family emigrated from China to America in search of a better life. My father descends from Germany with Jewish heritage. I remember growing up, we would celebrate Chinese New Year for my mom, Hanukkah for my dad, and Christmas because we live in America. Now, there are three possible responses which interracial parents can have when raising their kids. The first of which would be telling them, you don't have a racial identity because being human is what is most important. Race is irrelevant. The second, most common in African American biracial children, is that you take the identity of the parent of color with the so-called one-drop rule. And then the third, which is the increasingly popular option in America today, and how I was raised, is that you pass on the identity of both parents. I'm half Asian and half European, and I was raised as such. From my mother's side, I gained experience dancing in Chinese New Year parades, singing Chinese nursery rhymes with my sisters, and learning how to knead mochi to the perfect texture with my ama, or grandmother. But at night, it was my father who read us to sleep with Grimm's fairy tales and stories of grand European kings and queens. We would listen to Beethoven and Bach in the car, immersed in German and European culture. But really, American culture is what I was most immersed in. Being born and raised in America, my sisters and I most notably remember grilled cheese, rock and roll music, and the 4th of July. Now, it wasn't always like this for interracial kids in the US. You might be surprised to hear that anti-miscegenation laws were in place in America for quite a long time. You see, anti-miscegenation pretty much just means against interracial couples. As you can see, in 1833, France abolished all interracial relationship prohibition laws. In Nazi Germany, where you'd expect it, there were anti-miscegenation laws until 1945, and then in apartheid in South Africa, you can see they were abolished in 1985. Unfortunately, in many parts of the world today, they're still in place. For example, in Saudi Arabia, there are very severe consequences against interracial couples. Now, you might say, Sylvia, these are the places that I expected it. Obviously, Hitler didn't want Jews and Aryans to have children together, and obviously, in South Africa, there was apartheid. They didn't want the mixing. It literally means apartness. But do you expect that in America we would have a history of anti-miscegenation as well? Take a look. Until 1967, in many parts of the US, it was illegal for interracial couples to be married. This means 15 years before my parents met, it would be illegal and a criminal offense for them to get married in many parts of America. In 2000, Alabama finally abolished its outstanding law prohibiting interracial marriage. Although this was unenforceable due to the act in 1967, they still had in their laws of Alabama, we do not marry interracial couples. Until 2000, very recently. And then most recently, in 2009, Justice of the Peace Keith Bardwell refused to give a marriage license to an interracial couple. That means that I and the 4.2 other interracial children in America today should not exist if these laws were in place. Only 15 years before my parents met, this was still happening in our country, in our America. Now, I myself have never really experienced any negative connotations of my race, fortunately. But I do remember when the reality of this hit me, and my sister came home from school one day, the one pictured in white, if you're wondering, and she said, Sylvia, today a boy cut in front of me in the lunch line. He said, "Go back to China, chink." I almost started laughing at this. I was so young and I did not understand anything that this signified. I thought, why would anyone ever tell you to go back to China? You've never been to China. How can you go back to a place you've never been? That's ridiculous. And then there's the whole concept of chink. What on earth is a chink besides the sound that two teacups make when you clink them together? My developing mind made no sense of this, and although I'm sure this mildly offended my sister, it wasn't until later that I realized the reality of the situation. In my time, as I've said, I've never experienced negative connotations of my race, but I have interesting concepts on biracial identity here. One of these, I'll tell you a story. On my science Olympiad team, everybody is Asian. That's just how it is. We're not that segregated. Everyone is Asian, and I'm the only half Asian on the team. I've talked to them, and they consider me to be the one white girl on science Olympiad. However, contrasting in my a cappella group, which just tends to be all white, I've seen that they identify me as the one Asian girl in a cappella. Now, this is a little odd for me, considering I don't spontaneously change race when I go from Science Olympiad to acapella, or acapella to Science Olympiad. So that led me to the conclusion that there must be something else going on here. I thought about it, and I realized it's a pretty simple concept. You view others as how they are different from the surroundings around them. For example, because I am the only person of Asian descent in my acapella group, they would say, she's Asian, not she's half white. This can be ultra-simplified in the graphic I made. If you know that purple is a combination of red and blue, it can be seen as either a warm color or a cool color. So when you place this purple marble into a group of red marbles, you're going to easily identify this purple marble standing out from the ones around it and say, it looks like more of a cool color, contrasting the red around it. But if you take the same marble, you put it in a group of blue, you're going to also easily identify it, but you're going to say, that looks like a warm color, contrasting the blue around it. So what happens when you take my analogy one step further and you put this purple marble into a situation with multicolored marbles? There you go. Each of these different colors represents a different race. In this graphic, you can see that you see purple as more of what it is, a combination of blue and red, both a warm and cool color. Now, you might say, Sylvia, where do you get these ideas anyways? You're just a 15-year-old high school student. And 15 years. Yes, 15 years. But those 15 years have been spent living as a biracial person and experiencing these things. I'll give you another story. So last year, there was a French exchange student in my history class. No biggie, he had just come from France, been raised in a very French culture, very culturally uniform. I remember we got back our first test of the year. I got an A, and he got an F. He turned around to me and said, in all sincerity, Sylvia, you got an A because you're Asian. A is for Asian. That's the only reason you got an A. And then, in the one witty comeback I ever had, I turned around and I said to him, oh, by your logic, F is for French then, and you got an F on this test solely because you are French. I don't think it works like that. And so it's very easy to forget how racially uniform the rest of the world is in comparison to California. If you see from this graphic, it's a huge outlier, with 20% of Californians identifying as multiracial or biracial in comparison to the measly 3% of the rest of the US. Now, through age groups and across time, you can see that multiracial couples and interracial children are going to increase. If you look at this graphic, you can see that 14% of 18 to 19-year-old teenagers are in interracial relationships as of 2005. However, when you go to 20 to 21, that decreases by 2% to give you 12% of couples are interracial. When you go one step further, you take it to 30 to 35, 7%. A sheer decrease in interracial couples as you get older and older. Now, because of this means that interracial couples are on the rise through age groups and through time. So, as I said before, although only 3% of Americans identify as multiracial, it is set to skyrocket in the coming years. In only 10 years, between the 2000 and 2010 censuses, there has been a 50% increase in people identifying as multiracial and interracial in America. There are 4.2 million interracial children, including myself and my sisters, in the US today. We are the fastest growing youth group in comparison to any other group in America. It's clear, multiraciality is the future of America. Maybe in the future, you can expect more kids to grow up eating white rice topped with Parmesan cheese. Thank you.